Good morning, and welcome to Real Human Design Stories, where we share real-life stories of how human design has helped our guests know themselves on a deep, transformative level. Whether you're joining us live here during Sunday Story Hour in my Facebook group, or catching this on your favorite podcast platform on Mondays, you'll be able to find all the details you need in the show notes or the Facebook comments. Human design helps us to differentiate between what is ours and what is conditioning. By knowing and trusting ourselves, we develop deeper, more honest relationships and unlock our true gifts. I'm Kathy Bashanko, and my guest this week is Leila Ghazal, a 4/1 emotional manifestor, juxtaposition cross of experimentation. And I think, Leila, you are my first juxtaposition cross guest that I've had, if I'm remembering correct. I'm really excited to talk to Leila. I met her through a human design professional community, and she was just blowing my mind with the crazy stuff she was talking about. I think we were talking about solar flares and all kinds of energy stuff. And I know there's some galactic stuff in the terminology you use for your business. So Leila and I have connected a little bit through just all kinds of different things now, and it's been fun, and I've really been looking forward to this. We scheduled this a couple months ago now, right? And you've been all around the world, I think, since. So Leila, I'd love for you to just jump right in and start telling everybody a little about yourself and how you started on this big journey with human design and all your good stuff.
Yeah. Hi, Kathy. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been looking forward to this for months now. Yeah, it's been quite the journey since we met. It almost seems like that's when things kind of started for me. So let me just go back in my mind to try to figure out where to start with this whole process, right? When I actually encountered human design. So I believe it was 2017. I was at my apartment. I was sharing an apartment with a couple of burners in Brooklyn. And we had a few fun, people come over, and we had a small gathering. And I was introduced to astrology and human design at the same time. So at that time, I was pretty heavily conditioned. So I'm actually a reflector personality. And so I found over time that I've had to go through a lot of deconditioning, I guess, in order to really kind of get to the root of who I really am. And so at the time, I believe it was somebody who just kind of like casually was like, "Hey, what's your big three?" Or, "What's your human design?" And I was like, "I have no idea. How do I pull that up?" And, they helped me pull it up. And it was just kind of like something clicked ever since. It kind of took time, as an emotional being, it kind of takes time to unfold. And I was slightly resistant at first to the, sort of like manifestor label. I think labels kind of used to bother me at the time, but then over time I was just kind of intrigued, and I grasped onto like the meanings, right? Because I feel like with the reflector personality, you're just like, "Oh, is that me? Like, I'm not sure. Like, let me check it out." And I kind of went into that slowly, and was just in my experiment for, I think, over 7 years now. But over time, it just developed, and I found myself going from, hyper scientific to, super creative. And just that flow was very interesting, because it feels like I went from, the masculine of like labeling and kind of, you know, like organizing in a sense, into a very sort of like loose time, divine timing sort of person. So it's been very interesting kind of going through that journey in a sense.
So that's interesting. So you're saying in the beginning, when you say the labeling, did you mean trying to fit into those new labels? I think that's a common thing, is when we first find out what we are, or, who we are supposed to be according to human design, we try to be that instead of leaning into it and just being, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I felt like it didn't fit necessarily, because it made it seem as though I was this sort of like forceful being, even though I'm very soft, or at least feel to myself like very soft and gentle and sensitive. And
Mhm.
so to kind of like hold this massive aura was very interesting to me. I was just like, oh, like it's almost like not knowing one's power. And when I started in this, I was very deep into the scientific community. I mean, I was in academia, I was a researcher, and so very much like my one line was very activated. I was a researcher in a clinical trial, basically, and I was in the psychedelic research world in at NYU. And it was a very interesting sort of combination of witnessing the experiential, like energetics that were happening, because it was kind of like at the cutting edge of science, but then going into this like sort of not necessarily woo woo, but just like this uncharted land, like the mysterious or the mystery. And that was really interesting because it was like a very potent time for me to kind of transfer from a place of, labeling everything. I mean, we had so many different events during the clinical trial where I had a lot of pressure to actually make sure things were up to par in terms of like FDA, approvals and things like that. And then going from that to completely, going the other way, swinging the other way in terms of the pendulum, right? Going from scientific to like completely galactic, leaving the system completely and just becoming like a shaman. So that was really, really interesting, kind of the transformation that happened over time. But yeah, not sure if I answered your question, just kind of like going off of what feels right.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And so I'm going to give a little disclaimer here because I am at my daughter's house still. And last week I hated the mugshot wall so much. I had my husband send me a picture of my wall in my office. So this is virtual. But oh, wow,
Whoa.
that I did that's some effect I did. So there you go. Um, It was like I just commanded it to do some kind of crazy thing because I knew it was about to do some stuff. But also, there is a kitten that is screaming outside my door. So I do not have a kitten in my house. My daughter does, and hopefully she will grab it because I don't know if you've heard it, but she is very determined to let me know she's out there. So um, anyway, but back to your story. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. And as you're talking about it, I wondered if being a 4-1, that,
Mhm.
um, one, I'd really love if you explained what you know and how you have experienced that a little more because, it's described as fixed fate, right? And I
Mhm.
always like, not being that myself, it's I can know it, but I would love for you to explain what that is. But I know the first line and the fourth line both need this stability in different ways, right?
Mhm.
And this whole
Foundational.
foundational thing of knowledge and security. And so entering into your experiment
Mhm.
with that, I could see how that could get you really fixed into trying to control it in a way, right?
Interesting. That's actually a very interesting way to frame it. I've never heard it like that before. I guess it makes sense, right? I guess if I look back, because I think what happened was this is very much in line with what I was saying in terms of like going from like, academia into a space that is super unknown. So I think what helped me with that transition was actually working with psilocybin, right? The magic mushrooms. And I worked with them in a professional sense. And so it was very interesting working with them sort of from a distance and watching myself go from like this person who had to have everything under control, right? Being the investigator, being like super science oriented, into a place of letting go and kind of dropping into the body and being able to sort of trust the wisdom of the body. And I think that was really helpful in really understanding where the 4-1 comes in for me. Because if I look back, I start to realize that I've been having sort of visions about what is going to happen and unfold for me for a very long time. And so I'll have visions like 10 years prior to something happening. And I'm like, whoa, is that like past, future? Like, I don't know where this stands in terms of the timeline, but I do have a sense of where I'm going because my, fate is fixed. And I've been experimenting with that where I kind of, sit back and think and just kind of like ponder. And what I've noticed is that I kind of know what my trajectory is, and I know what it's been for a very long time, ever since I was a child. Like, I remember coming in and being like, this is what I have to do. And I remember being really annoyed with my environment because it's conditioned me so strongly. And I've had to kind of just like, let go of a lot of that conditioning. And so moving forward, I was just like, oh wow, I totally know what I came here for. I know exactly why I'm here. I know exactly who the people I'm going to meet are. Like, and maybe not in that much detail, but I can kind of get a sense of like, okay, maybe a few years prior, like I'll see somebody, I'll meet them for the first time, and I'll know like I'm going to work with this person. I don't know if it's 6 months down the road. I don't know if it's 3 years down the road, but I 100% know that this is somebody I'm going to be working with. And so that's been really interesting because it's almost like people will come into my life, but it feels as though I've known them before, or it's something about my trajectory feels very familiar. And so having that one line can be destabilizing because it's a matter of like really like how much is enough in terms of knowledge, right? Like how much is enough for me to stop asking? And then like having that community aspect, right? The four is really kind of what I can lean into for comfort. And so, yeah, I have like two modes. I have researcher and like networking. Like that's all I do. That's all I have energy for.
Looking at your chart, you totally have the design for a researcher. I mean, you've got the first line, you've got this undefined ajna with just the 43, which is all about structuring and taking all of that open head wisdom and funneling it into something that makes sense, right? And then you have all the head gates activated, all three. Yep. So, all the questions, the why, the how, and the what are all active there. So yeah, you are totally, yeah. And then bringing it to the collective, right?
100%.
To your collective, your tribe more is with the fourth line. But
well, I don't have too much tribal circuitry. Actually, the majority of my circuitry is collective, and that's been a very interesting trajectory because I've been really trying to look at that for a very long time. Actually, circuitry is one of my favorite topics in human design. And I've noticed that, even though I may not get, recognition or kind of like see my impact within my personal community, I do see it in the larger whole. Like I see it in terms of like world news or like really within the collective, which has been very surprising, very shocking. I mean, just the impact of sort of like my emotional nature onto a certain field or onto a certain, not necessarily even community. Like I said, I see it on a global scale, which is actually, it was pretty terrifying the first time I witnessed this. I was just like, oh my goodness, did I do that? And of course, I'm not alone, right? Like I'm not the only one working on this, but just the impact of that initiation onto a global sort of community was really shocking to me because I think that's maybe why it took me such a long time to, feel out the whole manifestor aura thing, because I'm like, wait, but I don't feel like I have impact on people. But then 5 years down the road, somebody's like, oh my God, you've changed my life. And I'm just like, wow, thank you so much for telling me. I would not have known. And then I'll see sort of the progression of the consciousness within like the society that I'm starting to live in. And I'm like, wow, society is finally accepting psychedelics. And I'm like, okay, I definitely had a hand in that, and right. Maybe not like on a totally global scale, but just it's permeated, right? Like it's totally permeated throughout the culture. And from when I started until now, like it's pretty, I mean, it's almost legalized, which is incredible.
Yeah. I can remember even just, before COVID, like people wouldn't talk about it the way they do openly and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, I do want to go back a little bit because I would love for you to go back to your story and your journey of finding human design. So, and the way that you felt with the labeling, and then so Where did you focus? Like when you found out your design and you were kind of focused as this researcher kind of thing, what was your
Mhm.
big thing where you're like, this is, oh, I want to really make sure I'm doing this part right, or whatever it was when you were in your head? Where were you going?
Yeah. I love that question. So thank you for bringing me back because I feel like I have so much to say and it would
Yes.
take maybe 6, 7 hours to cover everything. So I'm trying to just kind of keep things
Well, we've got
condensed.
two open-headed ajna people here, so it's like we could just, who knows where we're going to go.
Totally, totally, 100%. Okay, so where did I go from there? What was my focus? So the first thing that I focused on was my aura. That was the thing that I really just wanted to master. And that was something that became even more of um, it became more of a focus, I believe, during COVID because of sort of the 6 foot, distance. And I
Mhm.
was like, social distancing, rule. And I was like, that's so interesting. Like, isn't an aura like about that size? And I really kind of dove into that and started experimenting with like, okay, where do I end and where does the other begin? And I started to see how people would react to me. As a manifester, I would just kind of walk into a room and everybody would like turn their heads, and whether they're magnetized or repelled was kind of depending on what they're going through. But that was the first thing that really just kind of like settled within me, and I became really conscious of because in 2020, sorry, I failed to mention this earlier, but in 2020, I had a massive awakening. And this was not my first awakening. I had one in 2012, and it kind of like, it's kind of like for me, it's like a zip file. All my downloads come in like a zip file where they come in and I know it's massive, but then it unfolds and opens up over time, which is such a beautiful process, right? Because, with the emotional solar plexus sort of evolving in that way. And so these zip files will like unfold over time. And so I had a major one in 2012 and another one in 2020. And then in 2020, that's when I started actually like seeing auras as well. I started seeing energetics. I started feeling them very strongly. And that's when all the galactic stuff started coming in. And I realized, I had a bit of apprehension about human design just because, right, like doubt, the gate of doubt. And I would question all these things. But then once I started receiving these downloads of human design content without having to read any of the actual, like channeled material, I actually realized like, wow, this system is legit. And it's because I'm receiving my own downloads. Like I started receiving information without having to really go through the material, because then when I would read cosmology or, would read things about PHS, I'm like, wait, I received that as a download separately from Ra. And so I was just like, okay, now I can go off what I'm receiving versus just kind of reading something in a book and taking that, right? So it's almost like I just needed to open up a certain door within myself of like trusting what I'm receiving to realize that it's going to be validated somewhere else through like the original material.
Yeah, and do you feel like that door opened from the plant medicine or the
That's a good question. That's a good question. I think this kind of goes back to the 4-1 aspect, the juxtaposition. I think for me, it's like I have certain like not roadmaps, checkpoints in life where something's just going to happen just because like that it's fated, right? Like it's something that's been written. I've written this a long time ago before coming in. I'm like, okay, this is going to happen to me. This is what I'm going to learn. This is who I'm going to meet. And that's like such, and even if things shift like between the checkpoints, obviously like, choice, right? Like, because there's this whole debate on like whether life is fixed or or we have a choice. And I like to say that we have both, but it's just like some things are certain, right? Some things are set in stone. It's like no matter what road you take, you're probably going to get there because that's what our soul is here to learn, or at least that's kind of how I experience it. And so
but what's the journey going to be like along the way is your choice.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel like we have a choice in that, right? Like I feel like it's not fully set in stone, but there are certain things that are 100% going to happen. And I feel like the 2020 awakening was just something that was written. It's something beyond me, beyond any sort of helping spirit or being, even though I do believe that plant medicines had a major role to play. They've been helpers for a very long time, longer than I can even acknowledge, because of just kind of like the healing nature and just the helping nature of the spirit itself. I believe they came in, for as allies for me. And because that's just kind of how I see different like spirits. And they've definitely helped me awaken in this major way. But it was not just that, right? Like it was just kind of something that it's the shock for me, right? Like I have gate 51. And so it's very much needed whenever I go into like this major awakening transformation, I have to have like a slap in the face in the sense in order to really kind of encode the information.
Yeah. So, okay, so many questions going through my head right now. Because first of all, I was like, yeah, I've witnessed some of those things where
Oh yeah.
this happened, with you as you're like messaging me about stuff, and like so many, like I don't even know where to begin with all the things that have unfolded just from random communications we've had, right?
Yeah.
But then, and I'm also noticing people sending you lots of love in the comments in the Facebook group.
Oh.
And somebody says, Joan Merwin says, Leila healed me via phone while I was in the hospital recovering from spinal surgery. So like,
Oh,
and then somebody
Joan.
else, oh, that was Joan that also said that you're a true healer. True healer. That comment was from her also. So like, yeah, lots of stories we could go to. So where do you want to go first?
That's a great question. I'm so grateful to see you, Joan. I can't really see who's commenting, but I'm so happy to know you're here and watching. And yeah, the healing part, I don't really talk too much about that, actually. This is just something I do for loved ones and, people I feel like I'm meant to work with. And it's very interesting because, as a non-sacral being, I don't have an unlimited amount of energy. And so whenever I feel like it's needed, it's something, it's like 100% of my being goes towards doing that. And so this is why I feel like it would be a disservice to myself to really kind of like advertise that as something that I do for clients, because I feel like that's like a sacral sort of job, or vocation, or whatever you want to call it. But for me, I feel like I have certain people that I know I'm going to be working with, and or I just feel strongly that this is something I need to do. I need to offer in terms of whether this is I know this person from a past life, or just there's this strong bond, or I know that they would receive help from me in this certain way, or I could provide my service in this way. And that's when that comes up. But yeah, that's in terms of the healing. Sorry, I wasn't sure where to go with that.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, is it just you set an intention, or do you have a certain way you do things for when you heal people?
So it's similar to Reiki, actually, but it's not something I was taught. This actually comes directly from my galactic family, or like this came from like how do I say this? It's almost like a training that I've had in a past life, using this technique from Arcturus, the planet Arcturus. And so I was trained in this way to basically bring in a certain frequency of light from that planet or from that star. And I just bring it in basically. And what it does, it's alive, right? It's conscious. It's like a plant medicine. And so it comes in through the body, and it's intelligent. And so it comes in and it basically does like this is really difficult to explain, actually, because it's all energetics. Right. But it comes in and it does like it's like a machine that almost goes in and how do you say that? Like measures to see like what's missing, or what's off, like if there's any blockage within the body. And because like I said, I have a reflector personality, I can actually feel this in my own body. So let's say I'm sending this to somebody in front of me, I can actually feel in my own body where the blockages are. And so then I'll try to clear them. Sometimes I'll call in certain beings, or certain spirits, or certain like galactic beings to come in and help me like break down those blockages. Or, sometimes certain stories will come up of like why they're there, and then we'll talk about it afterwards. And then that seems to really help people.
That's really cool. And so,
thanks.
How long have you known you had that ability?
I think since 2020. That's when like all the galactic stuff came in, because then I started being able to understand like what planets held which consciousness, or which beings lived on which planets. And A lot of it was just, research, but then I also had to kind of match that with whatever discernment I was experiencing within my own body, because there is a lot of information out there that doesn't fully match up. And so really kind of strengthening my discernment skills was helpful with that, because then I can understand, like, okay, is this real or is this somebody just writing a story? Right. And so a lot of that came in at that time, and I started seeing beings, they started coming to me at night doing healings on my body. I started having like psychic surgery on my body, and I started having connections with like actual galactic beings. And it was actually really scary at first, because I have so many one lines in my chart. So kind of used to be a scaredy pants. But over time I developed that like beautiful relationship with them. And I realized, like, okay, if I'm able to discern if these beings are coming from a place of like unconditional love, then okay, this, we move forward. And then so much has unfolded since. I mean, I can tell you stories for days.
Yeah, I get that feeling. And it's funny because so many things I've wanted to ask you, but I've purposely not reached out to have those conversations, because I found that if I talk about certain things too much ahead of time, I don't ask the good questions on the podcast.
I understand.
But the whole galactic thing is probably a little bit odd to some people, but I get it. And I believe that I'm pretty confident that I have been on other planets in other
Amazing.
whatever. So, the interesting thing is that, or there's lots of interesting things, but an interesting thing is just recently I was exposed to someone, I'm blanking her name. I wish my sister was awake now. She lives in Thailand. She's probably sleeping. And put her name in the comments, but there's a woman who teaches, you might know, she teaches that, there are 3 types of soul incarnations, that there's earth souls, interplanetary souls, and angelic realm souls. So I think there's a lot of people out there teaching that sort of thing. And a lot of people are aware of their own connections with other galactic places, beings, whatever. But the idea of galactic beings coming in the night, I think that would scare most people in the beginning. Later you get to the point where you get, okay, I get that they're not here to do me harm. They're here to help, but that would be frightening. So I want to switch a little bit to some of the synchronicities that have happened between you and I.
I'm so excited.
And remind me, I do want to get back to the original stuff about the solar flares and stuff. But so you reached out to me one day, or no, you put something on Facebook that you were looking for inexpensive accommodations in Ibiza.
Oh, yes.
I said, and I DM'd you and I said, you should connect with my friend Stefano, because he spent a lot of time there, and he lives in Rome, and here's the podcast I did with him, and I've linked you with that. And then you listened to it and said, I actually just listened to it, and then you tell the story now.
Yes. So, okay. So I had started to listen to this podcast episode, and then for some reason I got interrupted, or something happened where I wasn't able to continue listening to it. But then on my way to Europe, so I had this major sort of need to, escape, need to get out, need to, very 35, 36, right? Like my whole channel got activated, it lit up, and it was like, we need to do something new. This is not working. We need to do something different. Life is not matching up with what I want. And so I was like, I'm booking a flight to Europe. I don't know where I'm going. I'm just going to go see my friends. We'll see if Ibiza ends up working out. We'll see what's going on. And so I basically booked a flight to France to go see my friends. But then the sort of cheapest flight, I believe, was through a connection in Rome. And so I booked a flight to Rome, and I thought it was really random because on my way to the airport, JFK, I actually was listening to the rest of the podcast, and then I heard Stefano say, oh yeah, I'm in Rome. And I was like, wait a minute, that's where I'm going. And I totally forgot that I was going there. I didn't even remember. I didn't even know where I was going. There was just so much going on in my head. And I was like, wait a minute, he sounds so freaking cool. Like, this man sounds incredible. I really want to meet this person. I don't know why, but I'm getting this really strong sense that like we would work so well together or something like that. And literally I was on the subway and I remember this like moment of clarity because so much chaos was happening around me, so much emotional chaos. And all of a sudden I had this like moment of pure clarity. And it was like, I want to meet this person. And it literally lined up for it to be that way. Because when I got into Rome, I messaged you and I'm just like, Kathy, I'm stuck in Rome. I don't know what to do. Like, things are happening around me. I don't have a connecting flight. I missed my flight. And you're like, okay, let me reach out to Stefano, see if he's available. And I called him and he was so wonderful.
My intention was he would just tell you like a good place to stay or give you a little advice or something, right?
He invited me to stay at his parents' house and I literally broke down crying. I was like, I am so blessed. I am so grateful. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Stefano. Like, how could this turn into this wonderful experience that like, it wasn't computing, you know what I mean? Because it was just so go, 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 go. And I had spent the most beautiful, honestly, magical day with Stefano in Italy. I mean, it was a dream come true, honestly. We were just, walking around. He showed me around and we were just talking human design the whole time. It was absolutely marvelous. I mean, I even remember walking at night, I believe it was like 1 a.m. or something, and smelling the flowers, and the soft, beautiful summer breeze, and just looking up at these majestic giant trees and just feeling their, magnetic field, and having this person walking next to me that is such an angel to kind of like come in and be this beautiful person and provide such an incredible experience, hold space in this beautiful way, just also like educate me, right? Like in these incredible ways. And it was magical. I didn't want to leave. And he was like, you can stay as long as you want. And I'm just like, you were amazing. Thank you so much. I have to go tomorrow. But like, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm just so blessed to have met him. And I'm so grateful to you for that.
Yeah, I'm jealous because I haven't met him in real life yet.
He's wonderful.
Yeah, he's really a fabulous, generous person with a lot of deep gifts, right?
Yeah.
And so, did he tell you some places to stay and check out in Ibiza though? Because you did go to Ibiza, right? Yeah, you were there you were stuck in Ibiza then, right?
Yes, I actually went to Ibiza. He didn't actually give me any recommendations, which was totally okay because I ended up kind of having a place to stay. I mean, I ended up going to a retreat and helping assist at a retreat that was just mind-bending. I mean, it was absolutely incredible. And then I was stuck there, right? Because I missed 2 flights, which was a whole other story. I missed the first flight.
And not of any fault of your own either.
No.
Like, you were actually on a plane.
Yes, the second time I was told to get off the plane, and then I called the airline. They're like, "Nope, the flight actually left." And I'm like, "You mean you told me to get off the plane so that you can fly without me? Like, I don't understand what is going on here." It was the strangest experience, but I was meant to stay there because I ended up, spending 3 nights at the hospital, and then I finally found a good flight, hopped back, packed my stuff, moved to another state, like. Which one would you like me to go into? Because there's just so much.
Yeah. So, and I guess the main thing in all of that, you've got this channel, like you said, 3536, which is all about emotional adventures and finding thrills. And so all of what you described for many people in general, but especially a first line or a 4-1, that could all be so frightening because you don't have the plan. You don't have this do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And now it's all doing. And so how did you stay okay with that?
That's a great question. So I've been on this track of like really trusting, right? I think that's been my biggest lesson, just trust in the universe. And going to France and seeing my friends there, we actually ended up going to a nudist colony. It was absolutely beautiful, very healing being in a space where nudity was so accepted by the society, and one felt safe in their own body, just kind of walking around. It was absolutely just magnificent for sort of like the fears that I had held, or any shame that I was kind of holding on to within my body. And, having that experience, I also connected very deeply with the ocean. So I have a very strong connection to water in general. I call myself a hydro mystic. So I basically speak to the water. I have a very, very intense relationship with the water spirits, the water goddesses. Just very, very intimate relationship. And I connected with the ocean in a way that was very profound when I was in France. And I remember her giving me some sort of training. Like it was very much like a training for Ibiza, which was really funny. She was very gentle with me at first, and then at some point she'd be like, "Okay, let me hear you roar," and I was like, "Oh, okay." It was really cute. It was really cute. And so I would kind of like go in deeper because the water was cold, and so I had to like connect in this way where she was like, "It's okay, it's safe, let your body kind of release it through shivers," or whatever the process was. And I remember my friends watching me sort of like from the shore, and they were like, "You looked like an absolute goddess. Like, I don't understand what was going on there, but it was absolutely magical." And I was like, "Thank you for witnessing." Um, so going in, that was a big lesson. The lesson and the training was about trust. She's like, "Your kitchens, collect the things," because she kept throwing these like little beautiful magical. Sorry,
I don't mean to interrupt, but for people who don't know,
yes, kitchen's environment.
and so so you collect things, right? Go on. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. So wet kitchens at that too, right? Like wet environments. And so as I was moving forward within the water, the way she would get me to kind of move forward was she would kind of, the ocean. Basically, she would have these like bright, shiny shells that I've never seen before. I was like, how are these shells this shiny? I don't understand. So she would basically bring one forward and she'd be like, "Take it. This is my promise to you." Because I had all these questions. I'm like, how is this going to happen? Am I going to Ibiza? Am I going to be working with this person? What's going on? Like, what are all these, I had all these anxieties. And basically she would be like, "Calm your mind with the cold water. I'm going to send you a little, a little promise that this is going to work out for you. Just take it and collect it and keep it with you and keep that as my promise to you." And I was like, wow, okay. And so it was really about trusting, right? Going into the depths of the ocean, into the cold unknown, and knowing that my, mother, in French, the ocean or sea is la mer. And that's also mother in French. And so I was basically addressing her in French as my mother. And she was like, "Yes, I'm your mother. Basically, she said, you only answer to me. You don't answer to anyone else. Don't ever feel like you have to answer to anyone else. You answer to me." And I was like, "Yes, mother." And so, we moved forward in that way. But it was such a beautiful lesson because there was also this lesson of like letting go of these promises of like, you are safe and held despite having little things that remind you of me. Like, yes, I will let you keep these, but at some point you're going to have to let these go. And I've had to let them go in Ibiza, but then she gave me new things. And so this whole like progression of growth through trust was a real practice that I've had to sort of like strengthen through this journey, through these travels.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about, the ocean, and I love the ocean, but the cold is not so much a fan of mine. I'm one of those people who, when I go in, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that part feels really brave to me. But because I'm down here in Florida now at my daughter's, and
Nice.
I've only had the chance so far to go to the ocean twice just because of other things going on. But the first day I went by myself, and what I said last week on the podcast, that I literally, when I walked into the water, like started to get tears because it had been probably
yes.
since I'd been in the water, and the water was like so beautifully just warm, like not warm, but just like, like I just every care in the world. And I literally was in the shower this morning thinking, I need to go back to the ocean. I need, it's really calling me. And I think tomorrow I'm going to try to go over there.
I love that for you.
Last week on Monday, I actually posted some pictures. I went with my friend Angela.
Oh, I did see those. Yeah.
That was the most magical time. And I was actually thinking about that too when you were talking about meeting up with Stefano and the beautiful conversations. And I thought there's something just so beautiful that I have found in my friends who are on this journey along with me, because there is a level of safety and understanding and just ability to be yourself. So here I was with this person who I recognize for her in all of her human condition and all of, the beauty of who she is, flaws and all. And she sees me, she one time looked at me and then with great love in her heart said, "You talk a lot, Kathy." And, but it was said with love, and it was not taken as any kind of, because I'm chatting. But that was a long time ago. And, but anyway, I still talk a lot, but we were out in the ocean and we wound up standing out in the ocean, like chest high, talking for probably an hour or more before then the sun was setting. And she's like, "I'm going to go get my phone and take some pictures." But it was like the most beautiful, like acknowledging of the power of the ocean and the love of the ocean and the connection with somebody who's just really seeing you for who you are. And and nothing to prove with each other. And it was, and then actually Angela and I went out last night and we went dancing. And when I looked at her, we'd been dancing probably about an hour and a half nonstop. And she's a mental projector. I'm a projector. Nice. And I said, "This is success." And she's like, "Absolutely." Right? I love that. Really being in your body and present and like, and it was this really great group of people that were just so eclectic. It was one of those just had it. So, but anyway, now I've diverted the whole conversation. We're not from the ocean, but it was just another moment of this, because we had said on Monday, this is success. So understanding. I love it. This is, like people think projector success or, the piece of a manifestor, I don't know, they try to put it into 3D of terms, I think initially. Projector success. Oh, I'm going to be wealthy and I'm going to have like this great business. And yeah, those things are all great. I'll have those too. But success is when you're really seen for who you are. Yeah. Able to be present in the moment. And so anyway, back to your story of you were in the ocean. I'm sorry, I kind of derailed you there.
No, you're good. I actually love that you sort of related my experience to yours, because I really felt sort of the aliveness of what I was talking about in your story as well, and I felt very much that the gaps in which I sort of didn't necessarily address, you addressed, and I thought that was absolutely beautiful, because that's what it is, right? It's the all of the sort of keywords that you mentioned. I'm just like, yes, that's it exactly, and even that piece that like you were saying, there's this very small box of what people express as peace, but that's not what it is, right? Like I even found after coming out of the ocean, just sitting there, and I remember my friends looking at me, they're like, "You look so at peace," and I'm like, yeah, I just had to really, create that and just, be in the right environment and allow myself to just kind of let go of everything else, even if it had to be through that 35-36 channel of like emotional chaos. Once I actually go through that and allow myself to experience all of that, then the peace comes, right? There's a reason all these things happen. Everything is within divine timing. Everything comes through the emotional solar plexus. I mean, we are evolving into another type of being. And so just allowing, I think more so than just kind of like putting things in boxes seems to be what we're moving forward into the future with,
Yeah. Do you have a vibe about what that other type of being is going to be like?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard the terms of like, Homo galacticus or, rave.
I've heard Homo luminous.
Oh, yeah, sure. I haven't heard that one, but definitely.
I hadn't heard the one you said. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, cool.
But what do you feel in your knowingness, right? Like, what do you feel it's going to, because I love that you said that we're evolving, because I think everybody thinks that people are just going to be born different and all of us are going to be the other way. But a lot of us are moving that way already.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
The birth thing.
No, I don't think it's just a birth thing. I think this has been, a gradual sort of process for a very long time. I mean, if you think about like, I don't know if this is controversial or not, but if you think about, the sort of advent of like autism, right? Like that hasn't really been it's something that's been around since the 90s, in terms of us like seeing it for what it is. And this is something that, Ra talks about in terms of the rays, right? They're going to have these sort of traits that are maybe not necessarily well established within the society, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. They're actually like in the future. So, and that's not how I've always felt about people who are neurodivergent. I'm like, either you guys are aliens or like, you're in the future. Like, you're more adept to having a certain consciousness that people who have been conditioned can't really vibe with, you know?
Yeah, and I think there's a my vision, I don't
Mhm.
know if it's what, I don't mean to say it's a prediction, but my vision at this point is for us to have people who are really truly encouraged to do what they love and express what they love in a way that that is done with so much love and not pressure, that
Mhm.
people flourish in that and want to share it, because I believe that the natural condition is to share and to give, and it's only when
Yes.
we clamp that down and make people afraid that they're
Mhm.
not willing to do so. And so, will some people, have days they don't work? Sure. Do we need everybody to work 40 hours a week? Probably not anymore, right? You
No.
know, um, so, I mean, honestly, I don't want to get into like the specifics of it, but I really think encouraging that diversity of interests in a way that some of these people with the more neurodivergent, like really intense energies, they're
Mhm.
just not going to have it any other way, right? So they're kind of
Yeah.
forcing us to have this conversation
Yeah.
because they're not going to they won't do it any other way, right?
Well, I think that they're not capable of kind of putting themselves in a box that doesn't make sense to them. You know what I mean? I feel like it's kind of, yeah, forcing us to be more accommodating to energies that are not necessarily systematized, right? I think the thing about the raves is interesting because it's not necessarily like a full jump, right? Like, even Ra talks about the fact that, they're going to start being born after 2027, but it's going to take like a few hundred years for the new human to come in. And so it takes a long time. And I mean, even if you look back, like 2020 is when things started to break down, right? It's taking us 7 years to fully see that shift before the shift even actually happens. And so I think it's okay. I think things are progressing in a way that's very comfortable and maybe uncomfortable for most people, but I think it's a very fair progressional like speed. At least like in my opinion, even though it's a little bit uncomfortable, it's not like things are sort of breaking down overnight and like, the apocalypse, right? I think there's a lot of doom and gloom when people talk about 2027. But if you think about it, I mean, we've been witnessing the breakdown for a very long time. I mean, in 2020, people started realizing, like, I don't really want to work a job. I mean, that was me, right? Like, I don't work 40 hours a week. I work when I want to work. And
Mhm.
so it's just like leaning into what the future is bringing rather than fearing it, right?
Yeah.
Just leaning in, like, what's the positive aspect? Can I get everything I want? Yeah. Why am I here? Why are we here as humans? We're here to experience the whole breadth of what life has to offer. And we can do that in ways that are not necessarily tied to, how the system has been created before, because that's breaking down, right? Letting go of the old, bringing in the new. There's so much to talk about here in terms of 2027. And I really want to kind of let people know, like, there's nothing to be afraid of. I mean, take this from somebody who has like 11 one-lines in my profile. Like, I'm scared of things,
Wow.
but I know things are going to get better over time. Like, nothing progresses or evolves to be worse,
Right.
right?
Yeah. And I know I feel like the analogy might be getting old because I talk about it so much and so many other people do. But like, if you just think about the whole like process of becoming a butterfly, I mean,
Yeah.
not only does that caterpillar have to go into the cocoon, it has to actually like dissolve and turn into goo.
Totally.
Right? And then once it is a butterfly, it has to like flap its wings and beat its way out of the cocoon, right?
Oh, yeah.
Then it's a butterfly. And I mean, so for us to really become what we need to evolve to be, there are going to be times of struggle. And if we can see the struggle as having that meaningful purpose, you know, I do want to shift the conversation a little bit before we run out of time, because I do know that the original things we were talking about, although I wish I could remember the conversation in more detail, was about your knowledge. You seem to have a lot of interest in knowledge about all these crazy, like insane solar storms, solar flares, and things that have been going on. I'm wondering if you can just speak to that a little bit about what you have seen that's been going on in the last few months.
Oh, absolutely. I've been tracking solar activity since 2020 because I realized that I've become so sensitive to it. And of course, I didn't sort of come across this randomly. My mentor, Marissa, actually introduced me to the concept, and I've been tracking it ever since. And because I've noticed that my whole body feels like it's just like running electricity through it. I mean, especially somebody who's very sensitive to energy is like, they used to really like take me out for days about a few years ago. And now I feel like I'm so much better accustomed to them. But basically, what I believe is happening is the sun is sending out all of these like neutrino streams. And, with the earth heating up, there is this alchemical sort of ripe condition for evolution, right? It's like chemical reactions happen with heat. And so it feels like, even though it feels like, something that's very uncomfortable, it's actually for our progression. It almost feels like physically what we're experiencing is like a match in order, like a fire, like a match in order to sort of initiate some sort of like physical transformation, right? Because the earth is, ascending or evolving in its own way, like the consciousness of the earth is evolving. We, as beings who are inhabiting this earth, because we are on this earth, we have to sort of evolve at the same time in order to not be left behind, right? And so it feels like there's this chemical process that's happening that not many people, I feel like, understand. There's like so much more to this, especially because, if you combine like the neutrino stream and how sort of the information comes in, it's also about how, at least, from my interpretation or my understanding, it feels like certain gates can be activated through these things depending on like where the sun is at, right? So it almost makes the process of, the neutrino stream coming from the sun into our systems more palpable, more physical, more material, right? It's just like proof of that chemical transformation.
Never really thought about it this way, but so are you saying that, like, so for example, like if there was a solar flare right now, while the sun is in, I didn't do the transit report this morning, I think 12.4 or 12. Yeah, I think we're at 12.4.
I didn't either.
So if we're in this gate, let's just say gate 12, and there's a big solar flare at the moment, do you feel it intensifies that energy specifically, or just all energies in general?
I think it depends. I think it really matters where it is in terms of like, let's say, the zodiac, right? Like if it's in Gemini or, but also in gate 12, I really think it maximizes those energies specifically as well. But I also believe that because everybody's kind of like different in terms of like where in their process they are, it may affect people differently. So for example, like I know personally when I, am out of alignment, or like I'm consuming things that I'm not supposed to be consuming, or, whatever the case may be, I feel like it hits me even more intensely than I would be if I'm like, meditating in the backyard. Like if I'm meditating in the backyard, I'm like, oh, okay, I feel the solar flare, I feel the intensity, but it's not as overwhelming as like, if I went out the night before and like had junk food or whatever, right? So it's also a matter of how the body physiology is at the time. So it's not just the energy that's coming from, because everything is being filtered through our own system, right? Like first, like you also have like
our filter clear, right? Is our filter clean? Are we taking that in the ground?
Exactly. Yeah. Because I feel like that is the priority, right? Because whatever comes through the personality is what's what's like programmed through the mind, the sort of like maybe the downloads that are coming in about like gate 12 or like about Gemini, or like that energy that's coming in that's very mental. Whereas like there's also this physiological body response that's happening according to like where we're at that moment.
Yeah. Okay. So why do you have information or personal theory or something about why the solar energies are so intense recently?
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like as a planet, we're like completely out of alignment, right? Like I feel like we're not where we need to be, like to evolve. And maybe, maybe we are sort of like, if we pull back and we're like, no, everything's perfect. I mean, yeah, technically, because we're part of a process, we're in a process. Everything is always perfect in that sense of like things need to happen the way they need to happen in order for us to move forward in the world. And like through consciousness, like we have to learn, we have to evolve, we have to, and I feel like the reason we're getting blasted so intensely is because we're just trying to speed up the process. I feel like, at some points there's this ebb and flow. I actually was trying to write an article about this, but then my emotional solar plexus was like, we're not doing this right now. Basically there's an ebb and flow to like when this intense solar activity happens, right? There's like a peak where like it happens super intensely all at once, and then it kind of like drops, right? So I think what happens is at certain times of the year, maybe a lot, or depending on like what's happening, I think it's all just kind of like in this web that's just written. But again, this is coming from a 4-1.
Right? We're just
sorry.
An open head, right? You're just, but like I said, we got two open head najnas or undefined head najnas here talking about, just things that we're really not necessarily going to have the answer for, but it's just kind of fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And to have sort of some sense of peace about it, right? Because it's like, I can't hold all of this in the universe at once. It's not my responsibility. I hold whatever I can hold, and then I let go, and I give the rest to the universe. And so I believe it's all kind of connected in this way where it, the sun kind of like beats us down for a little bit, and then it's like, okay, you get a break. And so that gives us time to integrate these like, different like transformations that are happening within the body. And they may be subtle and they may be more intense. I think it depends. I also think about like, when we go to sleep, I tend to like not be able to sleep whenever there are solar flares. And so the way I think about it is, I don't know if you've seen the show Upload, but basically it's this, they've uploaded people's consciousness into this afterlife world where it's like all it's like a cloud basically where they live there, and it's like a nursing home, but it's actually in a cloud.
I've never heard.
It's really funny actually. And so I think about how when they do the upgrades, right, when they upgrade the system, people have to go to sleep. They shut people down so that they can do the upgrade. But then I feel like with solar flares, it's the exact opposite. I feel like we actually have to stay awake in order to really encode the information that's coming in. But that's just my own theory of like how this works.
Interesting. Yeah, because I've heard theories that we're getting DNA upgrades and
that's it.
All of this and stuff.
Yeah.
So and lots of advice to do the things you were talking about, like being meditating, being in nature, being grounded. One more reason I'm going to go back to the ocean probably tomorrow.
Drinking water. Yes.
Really interesting as I am embracing my own journey of radical self-trust. That's my big hashtag right now, radical self-trust. People keep saying to me, when are you going to go home? Like, I got a husband and a house and a dog and houseplants I'm entrusting him to not let die. And I've been at my daughter's house here it'll be 2 weeks on Tuesday. And they're like, when are you going home? And I'm like, I don't know. She hasn't asked me to leave. And I haven't felt, that the invitation's up and so
you'll feel it.
Go in with the flow, right?
I love it.
Honestly, there's more to experience here. So, I've been here, used to come here all the time, but she just recently has a situation where she has some space for me again. So it's not always a vacation, but Okay, so this is all so fascinating. How can people connect with you, Leila, if they want to talk about any of these amazing things that you
Oh,
do now?
thank you. So you can always reach me at Galactic Blueprint .io. I believe my email is on there. It's Layla at galacticblueprint.io. And I do readings. I do galactic lineage readings, astrology, human design, all sorts of things. I've been putting my focus more into creating workshops. So I've become more of like into the teacher role a little bit, because of all my investigations have to go somewhere. And so I'm pretty active on Instagram, I think more so than anywhere else. And so that's galactic.blueprint if you want to follow me on there and sort of see my progress. As an emotional being, things happen when they need to happen. So I can't really promise a specific date of, certain workshops coming out or whatnot, but you can always reach me there. You can always drop into my DMs.
I know you just relocated. So where are you living now?
Oh, I'm in rural Ohio, actually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a far cry from New York. So big difference.
It's nice to have a backyard.
I bet.
Yeah.
Trees, or is it more plains?
Oh my goodness, giant trees, like giant, like 75-year-old trees. Absolutely beautiful. I have a baby bunny who lives in my backyard. I have fireflies every evening. It's just been magical, truly.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Every week we share stories of how my guests have come to understand themselves in a more loving and empowering way through the lens of human design. How you think and speak about yourself matters. Human design can show you the reframe of not only your own story, but the story you tell yourself about your relationships. If you're ready to start living a better story, I would love to help guide you through the process of fully embodying who you came here to be. I also invite you to check out my website at kathybashanko.com, where you can run your free human design chart and find all the ways to connect with me directly. And don't forget to follow Real Human Design Stories on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms. And please take a moment and give me a 5-star review. It helps so much. Thank you so much. I really, really enjoyed this conversation today.
Me too. Thank you.
Right. Awesome. Peace out, everybody.